Evening, everyone. Ben here, and I forget who it is has been bugging me in the comments. Also, thank you to the person who said Roy Cooper was the governor of North Carolina. Greatly appreciate that. Um, but someone's been asking me for a copy of the spreadsheet, so I went into Google Docs and copied my personal copy of the spreadsheet. Yeah. And if I get the gumption, I'll put in the spreadsheet I use for election nights, the blank version of the spreadsheet I use to, have exact totals and exact percentages for election nights. I'll probably do that some other time because this took me a good bit of time to copy over, get the format right, make sure, double and triple check everything correctly, and go all the way over. And there are a few things that have changed from my personal copy. Okay, so I believe I used the for 2016. I used the vote total that was available on the New York Times, correct, or Wikipedia. I forget which one, and I did that for every state. 2000, I used the Wikipedia one because it was the easiest to access. And when I go down. Of course, you've got the vote total for Republicans first. That this is not a bias. It's just this is the order that I listed them in. Democrat comes next. Then of course the two-party share. I'm not including other votes. And of course you get the two-party share in every state and nationally. Okay. And then I have the state rating. And the way I did that is, if you look at this, I took the absolute value of D2, or the, specifically I had to go through and do this for each and every single one. Actually, no. Apologies. I took the absolute value of each one. And this is the exact, it's the exact same thing everywhere. Okay, I'm just going to hit enter. Oops, enter. Yeah, that's what I meant to do. But I took the absolute value of this and I took, what was it? The absolute value of this minus the absolute value of the total. 53, the national. And I did the exact same thing for the Democrats. Now, of course, the way I had to do this, I had to multiply it by 100, or else it would have been a tiny, tiny, tiny amount to get a usable value for this. And also, when you look at this, because of the way Google Docs or Google Sheets is, I had to do it differently than what I did it on Excel. On Excel, I didn't have to, put double parentheses on this and divide the entire thing by 100. It's just I use the proportion, and anybody who knows a proportion can set this up. And of course, I had to multiply this by 100 to get a value that wasn't decimal point. But anyway, so I took all of this and I went down. I included the national just to make sure I was doing it correctly, 0-0, because that's exactly how the nation voted. And this total is useful if you look at the side, the best way to look at it. Let's take a state like Minnesota. Here it is. Okay, so of course, so the color represents the side that did better than their national total. Okay. So even though Trump lost New Hampshire, he did better than his national total, 48.8% in New Hampshire. Let's find it. Here we go. New Hampshire. He got 49.8%, which is better. Okay, let's go to Minnesota, another example of this. 49.7, remember 48%, 48.8 is how he did nationally in the two-party share. So it actually voted more Republican even though he lost the state. Okay? Now, of course, that's like half a percentage more, so it's not really significant. Maine was only, just under a full percent more Democrat than the nation as a whole. And of course, this takes into account the fact that, and all these totals work because of maths. The best way to describe, it's difficult to explain how these don't equal the difference of the two. But it has somebody who actually can explain what I did. I know what I did to get these values. I know how I did it. I just don't know how to explain it. So somebody who's better at math than me or somebody who can explain math better than me should explain it. And not only that, but I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to look at. That way you can actually check my work and figure it out on your own if this description isn't very useful. And also you can play around with it. And I'm actually going to add another column, or another 5, wow, another 5, or another column, or another section for 2020. That way, when those elections come around, that way I can update this, because that's the brilliant thing. Okay, so anyway, we get the rating for each state again. 2000 is pretty weird. Let's go to a state that voted for Gore, but was more Republican, like New Mexico. Yeah. Or Oregon, even. Yeah, Oregon was closer than the rest of the nation. Even Wisconsin is another good example of that. Anyway. And then we got the trend over that should be red. Sorry about that. Damn it, that's not what I meant to hit. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to put that back on state. Anyway, so then we get the trend. And this is how much it's moved over the 5 cycles. Okay? In total. So I divided it by 5 in order to get the average 4-year shift in the state. And remember, this is compared to the rest of the nation. This isn't how much it's moved independent. This is controls for the national environment. So if I were to use this, if I were to say do this from 2008 to 2016, which only has 3 elections in it, I would divide it by 3 with the 2008 vote totals instead of the 2000 vote totals. I get something fairly similar. Because guess what? This again controls for the variable of the national environment. So some states would definitely be weirdly more Republican, even though Obama won them. So if you really wanted to, you could test this out and see how well it did. For the various elections in between so you could test it out for 2004, 2008, 2012. You could do it for those 3 elections to see how well this actually worked. I've tested it, it's pretty close, it's pretty spot on. So anyway, after we go there, and really this should only be used to determine which states are safe and which ones are competitive and which ones are very competitive. So I've changed this part, the expected ratings, slightly. Only designations, and not any of the actual raw data. And the change is any state that has a value of less than 10, I marked in a more drab version of the party color it's expected to go to, because I consider anything less than 10 points to be competitive, 10 points more than the rest of the nation. So let's find a state that was vaguely competitive. New Mexico. Let's use New Mexico. This was considered vaguely competitive. It was about a 9-point difference between Clinton and Trump. It was considered somewhat competitive for the election, and it voted 7 points. Let's see if there's a 9. There were times when Delaware was considered somewhat competitive, and it's 44 to 56. Barely competitive. You could almost argue that it wasn't, but the point remains that there were times when it was considered competitive. Georgia was considered competitive, and yet here we are looking at 52 to 47. It's a little bit more than a 5-point difference, which is similar to what the actual election in Georgia was. This will not produce exact, and the spreadsheet won't produce exact results, but let's find one. And Texas, for a time, people thought it was competitive, but this was just barely outside what I would consider competitive. Here's a state that's just outside of where I would consider competitive, interestingly enough, which is Ohio. It's another 9 points, but it was slightly over 10 points more Republican than the nation as a whole. And again, that accounts for the fact that sometimes Democrats did a lot more poorly in a state than the Republican did well in. It is what it is. So the drab colors indicate a state would be competitive. So 2020, you'd have Arizona, what we consider the current slate of swing states. Arizona, Colorado, Delaware, interestingly enough, I would consider competitive, but yeah. Florida, Georgia, let's go down. You've got Maine, Michigan, Minnesota, Nevada, New Hampshire. You got New Mexico, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Texas, that's a new one though, Virginia, and Wisconsin. And as you go on, you can check it out for yourself. States like Connecticut will start becoming competitive. Maine continues to be. You've got New Jersey becoming more competitive. New Mexico becoming less competitive. You've got Rhode Island becoming competitive. And eventually Virginia becomes less competitive. And you'll see a few, states jump in and out. By 2028, you can expect Alaska to be competitive. You would expect Colorado not to be competitive at all. Maine flips parties that it's expected to go to, but again, look at these values and tell me that tell me that indicates that it's solid red or blue. Exactly. You've got, let's see, another state that switches parties would be North Carolina. Switches parties. Rhode Island eventually does flip. But I think part of that's Rhode Island has a ton of swing voters, so meh. It's really weird. Let's see. Not Pennsylvania, sorry, Texas would flip just barely. It would be, expected to be competitive. Virginia. Or, wait, no, I already mentioned it. Okay. Let's see if there would be Georgia, interestingly enough, just moves so slow. Now, let's look at something a let's look at, let's talk about the thing a lot of people are probably going to ask about in the comments, which is, well, I don't see any controls for demographics. Well, our control for demographics is the fact that we're using the vote totals, which includes the demographic shifts. You know, we're getting the demographic shift from 2000 to 2016, which includes a 27 million vote increase or thereabouts in the two parties. In addition, we're getting the shift in the actual demographic shift, of the nation. That includes the increase in minority participation. It includes Hispanic growth in Texas and the Southwest. And of course, California as well. It includes the shifts in population to the Deep South, where you're getting, an increasingly diverse group. It just doesn't look like I've included that because I haven't had African American turnout for this, because I want this to actually be usable and not just have a random spike in the middle of it that isn't replicable. When I take the average of everything, I'm including everything, and I'm using the actual raw vote totals. I'm not. So if you do want to include a shift, a control for that, you can, but I won't be using it because I think it would do more harm than good and make the spreadsheet and the method a lot less usable is the best word for it. Anyway, I'm going to leave the link to this in the description. You guys can play around with this. The way you do that, you're going to want to copy the spreadsheet and save it to your own Google Docs, or download the thing and save it to your computer or anything. So yeah, I would recommend copying the document itself rather than downloading it, just to be on the safe side, okay? Anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm sorry this was a little bit weird, but, it's good. I think that it's important that you guys have a copy of my methodology that you can fiddle around with and double check me on, okay? And of course, these are all assuming, 50-50 elections, which is not going to be true, or not assuming 50-50 elections. This is showing, if the election is 50-50, what state will go to whom. So if, say, the Democrat, and then you can go from there. Anyway, guys, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. See you guys tomorrow when I cover the presidents. By the way, before I end this video, I'm going to say for the next couple of weeks, I'd say until after May, the first week of May, I'm not going to be able to do election nights. I greatly apologize, especially to JJ. You've been really wanting an election night. It's just real life is getting a little crazy, and I'm going to unfortunately need Saturdays to do a lot of work. It's just the way life works sometimes. I greatly apologize for that. I just got stuff I need to do. And again, I really wish I could do it, but that's going to give me time to actually work on the election night JJ wants, that I should be able to have complete at the end of the first week of May. Anyway, guys, thank you so much. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Bye.